Welcome everyone, it's Shari Carroll for SimonsSaysStamp.com with an art journaling page that I've created. I'm titling this one Through the Window. I'm working in my Dina Wakley 6x6 journal with its nice thick white watercolor pages, and I'm going to be doing some inking first, and I'm using a couple of oxide inks. So we have walnut stain, salvaged patina, and then a little cube of rusty hinge. I'm doing the squishing technique, and I'm using a Simon Says Stamp storage bag and some walnut stain oxide ink to start with. Once I have some ink down, I'll spray this with some water until the ink beads up, and then I can turn it over and press it right onto the page. To press the ink into the paper, you can rub your finger over it and spread it out. I'm using the same technique using the salvage patina, and this time I spread the ink out a little bit just to kind of break up the lines from the ink pad. And once I have that in place, I can press that down and push in the ink with my finger. Next, I want to add some splatters with rusty hinge ink. So I've pressed this into our ink cube holder, and I'm adding a little bit of water to this to create a diluted mixture with a paintbrush. And then I can splatter the ink over the page. I've torn some paper towel and used it as a mask so that I can get the droplets right in the areas that I want. Once my ink is dry, I'm starting to use the Tim Holtz paper dolls, and I'm going to add some collage medium to the back side. And I'll set her onto the page about where I know that I want her, and I'm going to measure up with the frame that'll be covering her just to make sure I have her in place with the window frame. And once I have her situated, I can press her down, and I'm using a paper towel just to pick up any excess collage medium. For all the black imagery that I'm using on this page, I'm using the Tim Holtz labeled remnant rubs. And I've chosen these over stamping because of the texture of the watercolor paper that I'm working on. So once I have this in place where I want it, and I'm using our Simon Says Stamp T-square, I can place this down, and then I'll burnish it in real good using the Simon Says Stamp Teflon bone folder. To make sure that you have this burnished well, grab a corner of the release paper and continue to burnish until you have all of your remnant rubs onto the page. Next, I'm using the Tim Holtz Focus Stencil, and this is a really nice design. I can use this either vertical or horizontal. So I've taped that in place, and I'll be using this with some of the transparent texture paste. And to apply the paste, I'm using the back end of a palette knife, and I'm going to randomly press this in so that I don't get an exact shape of the stencil. And once I've removed the stencil, I am adding some of the Tim Holtz embossing glazes in walnut stain, rusty hinge, and salvage patina. I'm just adding pinches at a time, and then I can turn this over and tap off the excess onto a paper towel. For the right side of the page, I've turned the stencil vertically, and I'm using opaque texture paste for this side, and I'm going to try to avoid the areas of my paper doll. And once I've removed the stencil, I can use my palette knife and remove any of the paste that I don't want on my figure. While my page is drying, I'm going to add some embossing glaze to the window frame, and I'm using the collage medium once again. And just with my finger, I'll be swiping this onto areas of the frame. And just like my page, I'll be sprinkling on some of the embossing glaze onto the frame. I'll tap this so they mix together really well, and then tap off the excess. For this, I can heat set the embossing glaze right away with the collage medium as my base. And now that the pastes are dry on my page, I can use my heat gun to also set the embossing glaze. I've noticed that some of my remnant rubs are rubbing up. And once I had my glazes heat set, I went back in with a little bit of collage medium, and I was able to press my remnant rubs back in place. I wanted to add a little more balance to my page, and I'm using the Tim Holtz Snippets number strips, and I've used a little bit of the collage medium just to the back, and then I can place them onto my page. For my window and hinge, I have scored a piece of the Simon Says Stamp vellum, and I've scored it to the area of the left side of the window. To stick this down in place, I've used the Simon Says Stamp red line tape, and I've used the 1/4 inch. I'll just remove all these pieces. I've also added a little charm to the top with some string. Once I have the backing of the tape removed, I'm going to place the frame right onto that fold mark, and that is folded backwards, so it will create a hinge for the window. And then using my scissors, I'll cut around the entire window, and then add some red line tape to that hinge area, and place this center on my page. And finally, I'll open the window and press down the tape onto the page. Here's a final look at my page. I'm so glad that I figured out that I could use the collage medium to stick my remnant rubs back down in place. I really love how the window shows the woman peeking through, and then once you open it, you get the full reveal. I hope you've enjoyed this project. I do have all my supplies listed in the description box below, along with our link to our blog post explaining more about this project. And as always, thanks so much for watching.